I love turn-based RPGs. I've played them since I was a kid, and really, they're probably the genre that first got me into video games to begin with. Final Fantasy VII being the first JRPG I ever played. Who knew what long-standing influences it would have on me? While these days I like to tickle my tism with even worse experiences, I do often find myself drawn back into a good turn-based game whenever it shows me exactly what I like. Gacha games, on the other hand, tend to be my antithesis, often being rather generic, simplistic because they are often mobile games, and designed around a never-ending grind to keep you coming back. So you can imagine how resistant I was when my friend would not shut up about Honkai Star Rail, a Chinese gacha game from the people who gave us Genshin Impact. Now I get it, people love Genshin Impact, I definitely see what it has to offer. But other than that, it really is everything I don't like about gacha games. To each their own, it's your time, your money, but it was not for me. When I found out that my other dumb e-boyfriend also played and liked it, I decided to let the two of them know who the Sigma is in this situation and give it a shot to prove I am based and they are cringe. This was a mistake. Honkai Star Rail has surprised me. As turn-based games go, it is surprisingly fun and well thought out. The basic attack, skill, ult, passive setup is complicated enough to keep me thinking strategically. I do think it would be better if it was slightly more complicated. Maybe one more ability on each character, a second skill that does something else, so each turn you had to think just a little bit more strategically. But overall, I have been surprised by its complexity and find the combat very engaging. The music is also really good. And while some places are very generic, like the Lao Fu, or very downtrodden, which isn't much my speed, like Jello 7, they still have insane bangers in certain zones, scenes, and boss fights. Music is huge for me. I've made videos in the past just gushing about music that made me love a game more than I would have otherwise. Honkai did a great job with that early on. The music on Herta Space Station, while nothing insane, is a little funky and fun and definitely makes the great character animations stand out in the fights, which is important for early on in a game. It lets you really grab me and make me go, wow, these people are cool.
Rules are made to be broken.
And if the music wasn't there, none of it would stand out quite as much. This is even more true with the first major boss fight, where at first it seems like it's going to be intense, and then out of nowhere, it just goes crazy like an upbeat arcade fight.
Stay right there while I give you a present!
The game also did a good job by introducing me to a cast of characters I really enjoy early on. At first, they seem fairly generic, but as I played, I found each one more interesting, and not just as titty monster blow-up dolls. Welt and Himiko being these concerned parental figures, Dan Hung being the sad boy who reads in his room, and March being sweet yet dumb as a toaster.
The most beautiful, shiny toaster I had ever seen.
Speaking of characters, Stell/Kalis are surprisingly fun. At first, they seem very boring as just stand-ins for the player, but it's clear as they made the game they decided to give them more and more personality, eventually giving them actual voice lines outside of combat. I personally think this is the right way to go. A lot of RPGs just make the MC as boring and generic as possible because you are supposed to self-insert in their place. But I think that with the nature of the game and the fact that often your in-combat party rarely represents your out-of-combat present characters for the story, that the main characters benefit from getting the characterization that everyone else gets. This, by the way, does kind of highlight one of my problems with the game. I like the main cast. I actually like them a lot. I like some, maybe a bit too much. But while Dan Hung and March are with you early on, as you roll on the gacha wheel of pity, you will inevitably get characters that are just better. Some might disagree, but I found that the game suffers from power creep, with some characters straight up having another character's ult as just a skill. This means if you want to have a party mainly of characters who are present, assuming you even have them, as you might either be joining late or never got to roll on them, you will find it harder than if you used the new shiny waifu you just got while rolling forever. You might say something dismissive like, well, just deal with it or that's the game, but I do find it to be a drawback. Now, credit where credit is due, they did start doing perspective swapping in the main story of Penacony, where you play as the characters and get access to them in combat for the length of the plot. And this is definitely a step in the right direction. I remember as I went through the Laofu the first time, I kept wishing Welt was in my party. I enjoy him. He is this friendly, casual, respectful, worrying but not overbearing father figure who seems to be so unassuming but also keeps a black hole in his cane for fun and fears not man, beast, or god. Yet the gacha lords just keep giving me literal children instead of the party I actually want to be present in the story. I do have to mention that I have yet to actually buy gacha schmeckles and still have managed to regularly roll on the banners and get new characters that I do actually want. Honkai Star Rail is a gacha, and the predatory gacha is there for sure.
Sir? Sorry, hey. We wish to bargain our souls, for whatever.
But I have played through everything the game has had to offer without feeling like Xi Jinping will show up for my weekly ball flattening if I don't spend money rolling for waifus. Which brings me to something I feel I have to point out. Honkai Star Rail has really high production value. 90% of the characters are voiced. While it's just text for the most small side missions or unimportant nobody characters, the vast majority of the main plot and many side stories or filler stories are voiced. As someone who has been in an abusive relationship with Final Fantasy XIV since 1.0, yes really, 1.0, I have the tattoo of suffering to prove it, I am always flabbergasted at how bad many of the Final Fantasy XIV cutscenes are. How you will go from a voiced cutscene to two not voiced cutscenes to another voiced cutscene before ever actually continuing the plot. Some say, well, what if they added these cutscenes later and couldn't get the voice actors again? Yeah, well, that would be an excuse, even if not a good one, if the two not voiced cutscenes were not critical to the two voiced ones. It's not as if someone wrote the plot as just one section of story that was converted into two scenes, voiced them, and then later was like, ooh, I have a fun idea for some other stuff to add. They literally just don't make sense if you don't have all four. They were clearly all written at once sequentially. And this is a game that charges monthly and can take months to add new content. While Honkai is a free-to-play game and I have yet to spend any money on it, it seems to pump out new content almost weekly. From new minigames, to limited time events, to main story or fully fleshed out side plots that are also voiced. They just gave my toaster an even smaller skirt.
I want to stick my genitalia in it.
And added a whole new minigame to go with unlocking it and its upgrades. And it was all free! This doesn't remove my judgment of how they make their money, of course. It is still a gacha and I still don't like it. It has all the stuff I dislike, such as multiple currencies, currency prices being designed so you always have a weird amount of it instead of it being perfectly even, etc., etc. But when I can have a very complete experience at no cost while getting a constant stream of March Rule 34, I mean content I can enjoy, it's hard not to praise it. Finding something I can regularly return to that isn't just another PvP game or outdated MMO feels hard these days. Finding a team-building turn-based RPG that delivers new content to me regularly feels like a comfortable island in a sea of mediocre AAA and copycat indies. There are great games being released here and there, of course, but being able to return to something and have that good single-player experience is why I have to give Honkai Star Rail its just dues. Now, with all that in mind, I kind of want to talk a little bit about the writing, because the writing is fairly generic early on, but it's clear that as they have gone on, they've gotten better at writing and have been given more creative freedom. It's not all perfect, but when you compare the difference between Jelly Roll 6 and Penacony, you can see the difference. Penacony felt like a love letter to Psychonauts in many ways. A hotel theme park where the park is in your dreams, the secret plots by the powers that be to take over people's dreams and desires, the enemies, the nightmares. It was all a fantastical leap out of their comfort zone and a true pleasure after what was a fairly forgettable trip to China's spaceship, where we make sure the CCP knows we love China. Please don't put us out of business, Mr. Pooh. Penacony also had some of the best character moments, from Welt casually threatening what many would consider to be a walking WMD.
Reveal your true identity and intentions. Otherwise, brace yourself for gravitational disintegration.
And said WMD actually questioning if they could take him, to making drinks in the bar with a woman who will most definitely steal your girlfriend.
Oh, did you hear that? She just called me.
No. Wait.
or going on a cute date with what turns out to be the dude who just loves war crimes, but is actually an awkward girl who's had a crush on you even after you kicked her ass 6 ways to next Tuesday when she put on her funny murder suit.
Who the hell are you?
Gillinger. Dr. Henry Gillinger. And this is my magic murder bag.
There's also the interactions between Aventurine, Dr. Ratio, and Sunday, which made me go from hating Aventurine to wishing him the best of luck in ruining Sunday's life as much as possible.
Today's subject is slavery.
And of course, we can't forget our literal songbird and her catchy beats. Now, don't get me wrong, I do love Penacony, and me gushing over it shows that much, but I'm not trying to ignore other places. Every stop, even the ones I like the least, are still a passing experience at worst and a good time the rest. Actually, one of my favorite side stories is in my least favorite place, the Lao Fu, where you are helping a actual streamer hunt ghosts alongside this fox that is 5 steps from shitting her pants at any moment. Even when you run out of story content, both main and side plots alike, you still have access to ever-changing challenge modes, the roguelike simulated universe, which at this point has 4 different iterations that give different experiences. It's a lot. And it's all free. Ironically, the thing about it I dislike, the gacha, is also the reason it can be impressive. Gacha games make a lot of money, and probably an unreasonable amount. And that money can be used to really do things at a speed and quality that others can't deliver on. It's a blessing and a curse. So if you can look past the gacha and you like turn-based games, you might be surprised by Honkai Star Rail. As for me, I gotta go download an unreasonable amount of March 7th related content.